Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lewis. On this show, we have been through the entire Deep Blue Sea trilogy scene by scene, and now looking at some Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. That's films directed by Rennie Harlin, featuring aquatic action or sharks, and very much those latter two categories today. For Open Water. What is Open Water? 2003, very low budget American survival horror thriller, starring Blanchard Ryan, Daniel Travis, and that's about it. Directed by Chris Curtis and co-made with Laura Lau. The two of them did pretty much everything on the film. This sees a couple, Susan and Daniel, who go on a scuba diving vacation, and a mismatched, poorly done head count leaves them stranded in the water alone, fighting for survival. So we have a guest today joining me. They were last on. She was last on for a chapter of Deep Blue Sea 3, which we agree is like the most serious of the Deep Blue Sea trilogy, but does not compare to the seriousness of today's film. So joining me back from This Ends At Prom podcast is Harmony Colangelo. Harmony, welcome back to the show.
Hi, it's been a while.
It has. It's been a couple of years, but we're happy to have you back. It's been too long. I was scanning through the guest list and kind of saw like we just had one entry next to your name. I thought that can't be right, and I immediately messaged you and was like, "Come back on the show. What do you want to talk about?"
Yeah. I'm more shocked that no one has done Open Water yet.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't even seen it until a couple of days ago. And
oh, really? I saw this when it was new.
When this first came out, I wasn't as into shark films as I am now. Like, I think I'd barely seen Deep Blue Sea in 2003.
Gotcha.
I wasn't massively into film at that point. I was a burgeoning film critic. I was getting there. And I'm sad that I missed this. Although I think this is maybe the shortest film we've covered. I think I would have felt shortchanged seeing this in the cinema, just because it is 77 minutes long. I'm more of a get your money's worth kind of thing when it comes to films.
God, but like maybe it's just our current climate where 2 hours is pretty much the standard with movies nowadays. Like sometimes they're pushing closer to like 2.5, 3 hours if you get like a really prestigious. But like sometimes just a real short movie feels really nice. Like it's a breeze to get through, because it's like I can watch Deep Blue Sea, not Deep Blue Sea. I can watch Open Water like twice in the time it takes me to watch like a modern epic by Ridley Scott.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not complaining. The length is the best thing about this film, and it's a film I enjoyed. So like the fact that I went to watch it, I went to kind of sit down, have dinner with my wife. She ended up just kind of having a nap, and I thought, well, it'll be a short nap, I think, but I can still watch the entirety of Open Water during it, and I did. So it's just a kind of flip it on. It's not going to take up a whole evening. You could do other things and still watch it. It's great. Like the fact that it's 77 minutes long is amazing.
Oh yeah.
But that short length, I think, also helps the film, because this is an incredibly tense and incredibly grueling situation that this couple is in, and I didn't really want to sit in it for a lot longer. When it ended, I was like, good. I mean, it doesn't end with the full spoilers for this. It doesn't end well for the characters involved, but I didn't want it to go out any longer. This is the real kind of pit of the bottom of your stomach kind of film. This is a nightmare scenario. Like, of all the films we covered, this is like the one I'd least want to be involved with. I think I'd take Underwater over this, and that's like I think the bottom of the deepest part of the sea over just bobbing around on the surface, knowing you're just gonna die and waiting for death to come. Ugh.
Oh yeah. Especially because like this movie doesn't really waste a lot of time with its length, but like its budget is most evident if they had decided to stretch it out longer. Like the opening like 10 minutes of this movie, when it's just leading up to them getting on the boat, like that's when you can tell this was made on like a TV movie budget.
Yes.
But once they're actually like on the ocean, it's so much more intimate and has like a found footage quality, and it benefits the film so well. In a lot of ways, this is like the opposite of the more well-known shark movies like Deep Blue Sea or Jaws, because those are like these big, like heroic spectacles with like money and stakes, and this is just quiet and small and inexpensive.
Absolutely. What you mentioned in the opening, I was concerned when the film starts, and it's very much like handheld digital cameras. It looks like people making a home video, um, and it just looks awful. And some of the acting, I think, in that opening, the establishing stuff isn't great when they're talking about, oh, we need a vacation. Like, yeah, we do. It's just said so like emotionlessly and just soullessly. But
Mm-hmm.
when it hits the water, when it hits the vacation, it really takes off and it's great. And I take back any doubts that I had from that, and then the subsequent scene where there's nudity for no reason at all. Hey, there's
Yeah.
naked. There you go.
I don't know. They're a married couple. They're just doing married couple things. I honestly think that like the kind of I don't want to go so far as to call it stilted acting, but it's in the direction of that with the opening. It feels so much like a couple going through the motions, and you can tell like once they get onto the water and they're like really starting to get at each other and get frustrated, like, oh no, this marriage is not in a good spot. And maybe like there's some of it that's just like a little bit of inexperience because these are fairly unknown actors at the time, but like I think it actually works for like what little understanding we have of these characters' lives outside of this scenario.
Yeah, we learn uh, that Susan has a career that is taking a lot of her time and has caused
Hmm.
them to kind of reschedule the vacation. But that's about it. That's all we end. Like Daniel gets lost driving to his mother-in-law's house. That's
Hmm.
the two outside of the situation facts we know. And looking at the behind the scenes stuff with the director and with the producer, they talked about how this is kind of loosely based on a true story or like a true situation of a couple who went missing in 1998 and never returned.
Hmm.
So beyond that situation, we don't know anything what happened there. But Chris Kentis Laurel, they said about this film isn't about their personal lives because these are real people, and that's none of our business. Which I
Yeah.
thought was a unique approach to filmmaking. Of like this is about the situation, not the people. And I like to know the people a bit more. I like to get into I like more in-depth characters where possible. But that's not
Yeah.
needed here.
I
Uh,
agree. I think that, but for movies like this, I think it actually, I don't know, maybe this is just me and thinking of other like situations like this that you see in films. There's a popular joke that goes around, which is like just white people in what situation, where you get like these absurd like vacations or extreme sports or stuff like that. You get The Fall or Frozen or
sure.
any of these other situations where someone just ends up in a place and it becomes like a man versus nature story.
47 meters
Um,
down.
yes, exactly. With a lot of those movies, the issue that I tend to have with them that kind of pulls me out of it is usually once you get to like the back third of the movie, there needs to be something to like heighten the personal tension. You find out like, oh, well, I didn't even want to be your friend anymore, but we're only friends because of years of history, or I was sleeping with your brother, or like
Yes.
some
Okay.
big emotional thing that just comes out because, oh, hey, we're gonna die. I'm gonna clear my conscience. And they always come at like really weird times, and it just feels like it's adding to the runtime of the movie or just giving you an excuse to do more with what is fairly I don't know, an unchanging script. Like there's not a lot of added elements to like The Fall. So there needs to be like a hallucination scene that doesn't really need to be there, you know? This movie just cuts all of that out, and I think it is so much better for it compared to like its contemporaries in that genre.
I completely agree. We covered. I think it was the Reef Stalked has
Hmm.
that exact kind of thing where there's like two characters left and one of them slept with one's boyfriend, and it's just why are you adding soap opera drama to this shark movie? Why are you doing this? It was that or it was Shark Bait or one of those. I can't remember. Those two films are kind of blurred together in my memory. They're very similar.
Hmm.
Uh,
I think it happens a lot with just I don't know. They want you to care more about the characters, but like I feel like this movie does a really good job of just being upsetting enough that you go, oh, I'm really I'm not happy that these people are stuck in this situation, and I think that should be enough to get you to care about the characters. But maybe there's just not enough confidence in like creating that tone and establishing that empathy with the audience. Because like there's definitely people out there who think that Open Water is a boring kind of slow film, and I could not disagree more. But I don't know. I think maybe there's just not enough confidence maybe as in your film, or maybe you just want to show off more as a writer. I couldn't say for a universal truth on it, but it happens so much.
I was expecting this to be a boring slow film. Like I didn't like The Reef when we covered that. That's like I tend to dislike the more serious realistic approaches to shark movies, because I love Deep Blue Sea, which is not a serious realistic approach to a shark movie. That's the kind of film that I love. So like The Reef was similar to this one. It's very kind of, this is what happens. We're kind of stranded. We've got to go over there. Everyone dies. I think there was one survivor from The Reef. But there's just something different. Like it could be the brevity. It could be like it still takes 25 minutes of the film to get them stranded. So there's a lot of setup. But it feels so realistic. Like more so than The Reef. We're right up close with this couple. We're in their faces the whole time. And you feel like you're there with them. I think that's like how it was made, where Chris Kentis was filming it, was in the water with them, and they're there with the sharks.
Oh yeah, real sharks.
just looking at how this was made, where they had 2 days with the sharks. This film took 3 years to make over various weekends, whilst everyone else still had weekday jobs. But they had 2 days with the sharks, where they just chucked they like scientifically and methodically placed little bits of tuna in the water to get the sharks going, and more sharks arrived than they wanted to arrive, and the actors were just in the water with them. They had like chainmail on underneath their wetsuits, but Chris Kentis in the water with them decided he didn't want to have chainmail because it meant he couldn't hold the camera, so he was just there in the water with sharks.
I believe I think he has diving experience,
yes,
or maybe it's like so that helps him, I think, with that. But yeah, so one of my favorite filmmakers is John Woo. I love John Woo to pieces, and his principle of gun fu when filming a movie, in order to do it correctly, is in one singular frame, you need to show a person firing the gun. You need to see where the bullet is going, and you need to see the impact of the bullet. And sometimes with John Woo, that just means the bullet's going to explode into a huge array of sparks, and it looks awesome. I think that is what works with this movie, creating tension, is that this is not like a lot of more low-budget shark films where it's CG, so like you can very clearly suspend your disbelief and go, okay, well, that's a fake shark. You are seeing the sharks in the foreground or in the background with the actors. There's parts where they are drifting and there's a shot, the camera's above them and you see the shark swimming beneath them. Yeah. Establishing those in the same frame, I think, does so much for like the human need to be afraid and frightened of like an apex predator that could just tear you to pieces.
Yeah, like when they drift apart, when they both kind of fall asleep and drift apart, and they both wake up and there's sharks around both of them separate. That's it's real heart in your mouth. Like I don't think this is gonna end well, but is this gonna end terribly now? Is one of them gonna be stuck even more alone, but like covered in blood? What's gonna? This gets you. It draws you in and it gets you. And I'm annoyed I waited this long to see it. But there's one other kind of actual actor in the cast. Everyone in the film is just a regular person, like they're actual tourists on the dive, or they're the people doing the diving instructions. Those are just people going about their day. But there's one other guy on the boat, Seth, played by Saul Stein, who is the guy who forgets his mask and so he can't go diving. And I loved how much I hated this guy. He has so much so much like bragging about the car he drives energy. Oh, absolutely, yes. He wants to tell you about his bitcoins, I think, when he can't get off the land. And so he's dived before, he's been diving for years, but he's forgotten his mask. They won't let him go, and he's just doing so much. He's taking up so much of the energy on the boat and on the screen. He's only in it for like 5 minutes, but he is so memorable. I really liked that. Like they did a good job casting this guy for with the little money that they had. I think 'cause this is like unclear how much was the actual budget of the film, but $120,000 to $500,000 is what's on Wikipedia, which feels about right. I think. I'm not sure how much of that was flying back and forth for the various weekends of shooting. But the shots when they're on the plane at the start of the film was just they decided to film one of the times they were going there on the plane. That was just what they shot. So
I mean, that's just DIY filmmaking basically. Like this movie's really, really smart about how it does everything. From what I was reading, they told the lead actors like before they even were offered jobs, like, hey, you're gonna be filming with real sharks, and that's non-negotiable. So like that's just how you get it. Because like I mean, obviously with like so many movies, like The Reef actually has a very good looking shark, even if The Reef itself is a fine movie. Jaws looks good sometimes. Sometimes the shark does not look good in Jaws, but
same with
this is the especially now with like newer TVs. Like I think on an old CRT with like some grain, like the sharks look quite a bit better. But nowadays the age is showing, and that's not the movie's fault. There is definitely something about watching real sharks move, I think, with this movie that is fascinating because like they set out to say like, hey, we want to show this as like a realistic way of how sharks hunt and how they feed. And they don't like go in and just like gobble you whole or aggressively pursue you. They hunt by convenience mostly. They hedge their bets. Is this worth the energy to try and take down the thing I'm trying to eat? They nibble. They are curious. They're willing to wait. And this movie does not have these like long scenes of like 50 feet out, the shark turns around and you see its fin coming at you for like a half a football field. It's not shot that way. And just seeing like the quickness that they move or like the way that they breach occasionally, like the little bits here and there of how they put them with these sharks. You could do that on a bigger budget. I don't know why more movies don't do it on a bigger budget. Maybe because it's just insane. But the fact that this movie pulled it off, I think that's really what it comes down to is insurance. Like if you attracted any larger sharks, this would have been a much worse problem. Because then it's not a matter of like chainmail and them biting into you. It's a matter of them crushing you. So
they were hedging their bets on the sharks don't like the experience of biting into neoprene. So that's putting a lot of faith in that because the shark's already bitten you at that point. And if you don't, this one doesn't mind, then goodbye to your limbs. That's it. It's gone.
Yeah, because like if they bite into you and like decide like they don't want to let go, then they're gonna break you. Like they might not take a chunk out, but they will like discolocate parts of you.
Yeah, we talked about Poseidon on here, Wolfgang Petersen's Poseidon, which was made for so much more money than Open Water and made, I think, about the same amount at the box office. And that film threw so much money at the screen. There were sort of like 100 extras who all had 3 costumes, and Josh Lucas had 75 different variations of his own costume with different degrees of degradation on it. And Emmy Rossum had 50 different tops, and that's just wasting money. You can make films that are better than Poseidon for so much less money than was spent on Poseidon. We had the same debate, not even a debate, when we talked about Pirates of the Caribbean and Stranger Tides. One of the worst films we've ever covered. But when it was made, the most expensive film ever made. They're just throwing money at these things. And
that was the one where I tapped out. I saw the first 3. I never went past that.
That's fair. I mean, 5 is okay. 4 is awful. 4 has a mermaid in it. 5 has zombie sharks, so it's worth watching for the zombie sharks. But not much else, to be honest. 1, 2, and 3 are great. 2 is incredible. I love 2.
And zombie sharks, like this is Zombie 2, where a shark fights a zombie.
I think what you see is the results of that. The shark and the zombie get together and. Zombie sharks, but they're only in it for like 5 minutes. Again, it's one short sequence with zombies. Like if you have zombie sharks in a film, make it a film about zombie sharks.
Yeah. I mean,
Let's have a
there
look.
are certainly people who have made films about zombie sharks. I can't imagine that those are very good.
We haven't covered them yet, but I'm sure one day we will. I still haven't seen Zombie 2, but it's on the list. I know of it. I know of its reputation.
Hmm.
But yeah, we'll get there one day.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a fascinating thing to see a shark movie with real sharks in this day and age. Like anything post Sharknado where it's became extremely easy to create CG sharks because we know how to do it so well. Um, yeah, like that one or like Mako Jaws of Death, like just something about real sharks and like there's this element of them not being the villain when it's a real life shark because they're not gonna they're not gonna take stage direction. They're just gonna kind of do what sharks do. And
Yeah,
that's very much the case with this movie. Like these sharks are not the bad guys. Like honestly, the bad guys are Seth, who's clearly like an a-hole who's responsible for indirectly for them getting left behind, or just like sheer negligence.
yeah.
But
The,
it's
the
not
people who
really a
screwed up the
story.
head count, I think, are the true
Yeah,
bad
like
guys here.
you'd think they would have checks and balances where they go, okay, cool. Well, we did a head count. Now let's check the tanks. Like there should be several things, but this is clearly one of those like small, like mom and pop kind of businesses where you aren't really being regulated super diligently, especially 25 years ago when the original incident would have happened.
It was infuriating because they do a head count like halfway through the journey. So there's a guy just kind of wandering around the small boat counting people. Everyone's moving. So it should have been as everyone's getting on the boat, you do a head count then. Everyone's going in the same direction. 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. And then so he writes 20. 20 is on there. And then when they're go diving, everyone goes in apart from Seth. And then 2 people call it short. And then Seth and one of the guys go back in again, but there's a guy doing tallies when people get out. He doesn't cross off 2 when they get back in again. So it looks like 20 people do get out. And then he does another head count. He counts everyone and just crosses out the 20 that you wrote earlier, thinking, oh, I just must have miscounted then.
Hmm.
What's this? What if you miscounted now? Instead of
The
that.
true villain is human negligence.
Oh,
There's,
truly, yes.
there's a margin for human error, and there should not be.
Oh, it's just so infuriating.
Yeah.
There we are.
I,
Um,
I don't know. I just think that this is so fascinating in that the sharks are not villainized in the way that they are in most things. And honestly, just outside of there being sharks, which are present, but are, they come and go kind of. They're not a direct threat the entire movie. It mixes it up with just the general discomfort of being stuck on the ocean. Oh no, your Dramamine wears off, so now you're seasick. You got stung by jellyfish.
no
There
food.
you're hungry, you're dehydrated. Eventually, like night comes, and this movie has one of the best examples I can see of someone shooting day for night, in which
Yeah.
you just shoot during the day, but then you just correct the colors to make it look late, where it just is flashes of black and it simulates lightning. And like if you're paying attention, you know what they're doing. It doesn't look great, but for its budget and for doing what it is, it's actually quite spectacular.
It's very
And the
effective.
fear, yeah, like the fear at that point of all of these things are going wrong and it's dark, just utter blackness. Like it's one thing if you can't see below the water. It's another thing if you can't see in general. Like there's so many things that are scary or at the very least can wear you down and be frustrating and exhausting about this environment outside of just the threat of being eaten alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the jellyfish. I like that sequence because it's just one of them like, something hurts. And like, and it just cut out to this jellyfish and ominous music starts playing. Like it's just,
Hmm.
there's another true villain, the jellyfish just kind of bobbing along, being a nuisance.
Hmm.
Which jellyfish not used enough in films. They're,
No, not
you know,
really.
they're a blight. What are they for? They do nothing. They look cool, but they are helping no one. Uh, does anything eat a jellyfish? Is this kind of,
I
they're like,
believe the ocean sunfish does, and sunfish are dumb.
so we need more of them to kind of
Yes,
mop up the mosquitoes of the sea, as far as I'm
yes.
concerned.
There's a fairly famous thread of like a marine biologist going on a very long rant online about how much he hates the ocean sunfish because it is a dumb, like incompetent fish that should not exist the way it does. And their favorite thing to eat is jellyfish, which have practically no nutritional value. So they just drift along until a jellyfish just happens to drift into their mouth.
Is the sunfish the one that looks like basically half a fish? So it's like missing the
Yeah,
tail. Yeah.
they're flat and they've got these fins on the top and the bottom that don't really propel them. And occasionally they'll go to the surface and they don't really have a system for submerging once they hit the surface. So then they kind of just bob along on their side and get pecked at by birds until they die.
Oh my god.
They're horrible creatures.
Oh dear. Yeah, shouldn't exist. Somehow does. Great. This is what I love about the ocean. There's just so much odd stuff down there, and we only know a fraction of it. And what else is down there?
Yeah, so that's the natural threat of the only natural predator that I can think of the jellyfish.
So how long do you reckon you'd be bobbing at sea for before you started playing 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Oh gosh. Honestly, I would probably be the Daniel in this situation where I'm like, it's fine, right? Like it's got to be fine. Like
Yeah.
they'll realize how stupid they are and come back. What do I need to worry about with that? So I would probably do something like that to just distract yourself pretty quickly. How about you?
I mean, I think I would be the Daniel as well, and I get the feeling that this game was Daniel's idea to play, and he just started playing it, and Susan is just kind of tolerating it because what else is she gonna do? Where's she gonna
It's not
go?
like you can just walk away. Yeah.
But also, I was thinking this is maybe the worst film to play that game with, because there's two people, three actors in it, and they're not in a lot of other things. So don't start with open water. I think.
Yeah.
Is
I think that there's definitely a hard mode variant of this where like you start here and then just really test yourself. It'll probably be Blanchard Ryan because I know that she's done more than Daniel Travis. But like actually speaking of these two, I like the dynamic that you have in this movie where initially it seems like it's a very good bait and switch that you see in movies like Deep Blue Sea, where you think like, oh, Samuel L. Jackson, he's going to lead them to the surface. He's going to be like this strong figure for the movie. No, he's not. When you watch a movie, you go, oh, well, this is clearly who our main character is going to be. This is going to be a person who's going to like come up with a plan or lead a charge, something. And for most of the movie, that is Daniel. He's mostly just trying to keep Susan relaxed. He's trying to like, he's got some semblance of diving experience. He watches like Shark Week, so he kind of understands how sharks work. And eventually that all goes out the window when the sharks take like a bite out of him. And then that flips, and Susan, who has kind of been, on the back burner the whole movie, has to step in and take care of everything. And that's when like the stakes really shift, because he doesn't have like the tiny knife that he had anymore. This guy who was supposed to be like the rock, like the solid ground of the movie, is now incapacitated. And it's just a complete dynamic shift that works so well for its particular place in the story and when it happens. Just when you think like, okay, cool, we've seen most of what this has to offer, it flips the main characters in the environment, and that is so well done.
Yeah, I mean that flip happens like before he gets bitten, because like she gets bitten and he kind of lies to her and say it's okay, it's fine, because it's just a kind of a light bite. But when they've been bobbing for 7 hours, he just starts screaming at the ocean, and just that's kind of his tipping point. He's gone, and he never kind of comes back from there. And I can relate. I would have probably done that before the 7 hour point, to be honest. But yeah, you're absolutely right. She does kind of take charge, and she is the one. She outlives him. He passes first, but then yeah, her final decision to just kind of like plunge, just to get rid of her gear and just kind of sink. What do you reckon is the feeling behind that? How did you read that?
Oh, she would just rather drown than be eaten.
Yeah, I didn't know she like offering herself to the sharks, who are like all under the water. Just take me down there rather than up there. I think I gathered she was just kind of, I'm done with this. Let's just get it over with. But yeah, I wasn't sure if she was going for drowning or buffet.
Oh no, I think she just would prefer, like, that's why she took her stuff off, because like, and like the real tragedy of it is like that morning, when they've been out there for 24 hours or so now, that's when they start to realize, oh no, there's people, and that's when the search party sets out to go find them. But it's just there are so many sharks, and like clearly like behind the scenes, like it's way more than they wanted there to be, but like there's there's no chance. Like it's not going to be slow. Once one decides to take a bite, then they're just going to rip her to pieces. There are so many, and they're in such a frenzy. Um, and from what I understand, drowning is apparently one of the most painful ways to die, because even if you are willing to accept it, I guess your body will still fight it the whole way, and it makes your lungs and insides feel like they're on fire. Apparently, drowning is very brutal, so that is preferable to being just torn to pieces.
I mean, neither of them are recommended, I guess, but if you're in that situation, you
It's
got to
really
pick
an
one.
either or like there's
Yeah,
not really a
it's a
third
rock and a
choice.
hard place. Yeah, I mean, you do start to feel hopeful when when they realize that there's still hope, the bags are there, and they check the hotel and there's no one there, and the plane sets
Mhm.
off in a helicopter, and all of the boats set out, and then you just see these shots of just this endless expanse of water and nothing in sight in any direction. You go, oh, that hope was just cruel, just
Mhm.
mean. It's just for
Oh,
nothing.
it's so bleak. It's so unfortunate, and like it's one of those things where this isn't, again, like a good or evil story. It's just people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and them dying is just this senseless tragedy that didn't need to happen, and there's nothing you can glean from it. Just like sometimes it happens and it sucks, and there's nothing that could have been done once it happened to they like I don't know, when it comes to survival stories, people always try to come up with these scenarios of like, well, this is what I would have done in this situation, here's how I would have gotten out of it, I would have fashioned something out of something and propelled myself down from whatever. And that doesn't exist with this
No,
movie. Like
yeah,
there's no fighting for survival, there is just waiting,
yeah.
and that's all.
They could have swum for one of the boats. They wouldn't have got there. So
Nope.
they're really far away. They could have gone. Their options are stay where they are, swim along the surface, or dive back down. And
Hmm.
there's nothing in any of those that's going to help. So you just kind of gotta hope to be lucky is all you can do. Hope that somebody sees you, and
Yep.
that doesn't happen. So
Hmm.
there are two sequels to Open Water. Have you seen the sequels? I have not.
I have seen both the sequels, actually.
Are they? Would you recommend them? Shall we cover them on here someday?
So the second movie has actually no sharks at all. The second one is
What's the
Open
point?
Water Adrift. And I actually really like that one conceptually. It's just a little bit too long, but like as far as like a movie is concerned, the concept's great. It actually shares similarities with a later season King of the Hill episode, which is very funny. But it's about some friends who are just going out on like a day trip on a boat, and they all just jump in the water to go swimming, and no one lowered the ladder, and that's it. They're all just stuck, like, next to their boat, unable to get into their boat for the rest of the movie. And it is the most frustrating situation.
No. Yeah, that sounds terrible. That's even worse than this, because that hope is just you can touch it, you can literally hit the side of it,
Hmm.
but you can't. Oh God.
Yeah, it's honestly, I think that the sequel is so the sequel isn't supposed to be a sequel at all. It was an unrelated movie that they then put the Open Water name on because this movie made so much money. I think it made like $50 million or something on like a less than $1 million budget. So it turned a huge profit even
Yeah.
with all of the marketing that Lionsgate put into it. So like I get why you would kind of turn this into a little bit of a Lost at Sea kind of anthology where it's just people in the water. The third movie, on the other hand, does have sharks. It is a first person found footage film, and it is not very good. It's pretty paint by numbers. It's fairly forgettable. Um, yeah, I don't have as much good to say about that one.
Yeah, when you said first person found footage, I my interest waned immediately. Uh, um, because I know
I mean,
there are some good found footage films, but there are more bad ones.
Oh yeah, like obviously people will bring up Blair Witch. I think the first Rec movie, which got remade in America as Quarantine, is actually
Yes.
fantastic. I love Deadstream, which just came out 2 years ago, and that one's the found footage aspect is that someone is live streaming, and so it actually works really well and has justifies having different camera angles. I think that movie is super duper well done. But yeah, no, found footage films are a lot more miss than they're hit in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, regular guest of the show, Lisa Leahy, she loves found footage films. I think Lake Mungo is
Oh,
one
Lake
she
Mungo's
talks
great.
about a
Well, that's
lot.
basically a documentary. Like that one's staged as like more of a doc than it is a
Okay,
found footage film, but they're of the same sort of genre.
and like it's got lake in the title, so maybe we'll cover it one day on it.
Oh, it's
But
it's it's a dried out lake. It is not a real lake.
I mean, we've covered The Descent.
Oh,
We've covered what's the cannibal film?
what, Cannibal Holocaust?
No, oh God, no. Ravenous. We covered Ravenous.
Oh,
Just
okay. I've heard that one's
just
all
because
right.
it's good.
Yeah.
We covered it because Mark talks about it all the time, and I'd never seen it before,
Okay.
so we just thought
Gotcha.
we should cover this.
I
Um,
mean, Lake Mungo takes place at a lake. There is a drowning in it. Lake Mungo is also really, really good and very bleak because it's basically a ghost story. So, as a movie, like Lake Mungo is a big thumbs up.
I mean, I'll put it on the list. Uh, it's already on there. No, it's not. Great. On the list. It's a long list. We have several. There's a lot of shark films. Um,
Hmm.
that's why we haven't got to open water yet. I think it's because we don't just do shark films. We try and spread them out a little bit. But this is,
Hmm.
I think, one of the bigger ones that we haven't covered yet was this one.
Oh yeah. I
There's,
mean, for years I always said that because for a while I was like, I'm gonna watch every single shark movie. I'm gonna watch Red Water with Lou Diamond Phillips for made for TV TNT filmed, and it's got I think Coolio if I remember right. I'm gonna watch every shark movie, and then I think a post Sharknado boom. There's just too many that are not good that I just can't keep up anymore. But for years I was like, there's two genuinely amazing shark movies out there, like not just fun, but like very well made, like perfectly executed for what they're doing films, which this is Jaws, and then there's Open Water. Those are the two best ones in my opinion, and they do wildly different things.
right, they do, and there's a film I feel like is missing from that perfect shark film list, but
Oh, Deep Blue Sea 3?
sure, okay. There's two films missing from that perfect shark movie list.
Listen,
Uh,
I love Deep Blue Sea 1. Like it's just it's not up. It's for me it's not up to the caliber of the other two though. Like not Deep Blue Sea films of the Open Water and Jaws echelon.
yeah, I can understand yours, and Open Water is just a very different film. Sorry, if
Oh yeah,
that's
of course.
yeah. But we have a regular guest on the show, Kevin Culp. He made it his lockdown mission to watch and kind of rank every shark movie, and he's up to
Oof.
143 at this point, ranging from Shark Exorcist at the bottom to Jaws at the top, Deep Blue Sea in second place. He's got Open Water at number 55.
That
Like
is too low in my opinion.
it's below the likes of post-apocalyptic Commando Shark.
I
And
think that I think some people just like they're looking for something different out of the shark genre, and this is not it. Also, I know someone who's in Shark Exorcist, and they are like, "Oh no, this movie sucks."
I'm glad they know. We haven't covered it yet.
Oh yeah,
I'm not sure we ever
it's
will.
bad. It's real bad. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Oh
So
God.
yeah, I don't know. I think this is definitely an outlier for a lot of shark movies, I think, because even when you get to like other like very serious ones like the Requiem from last year, which is a fairly similar adrift at sea sort of concept, like or even The Shallows, which has a similar sort of concept of like they're all handling things very differently, and this one is just not as exciting, I think, as people want out of this genre. And there definitely is a certain barrier of like low budget that some people can't tolerate for their own palates. One thing that I do find fascinating is that Roger Ebert, who famously does not like horror movies, gave this a movie a glowing review
Okay.
because he said it got under his skin, and I think that's just an interesting tidbit for a guy that I agree with half the time and wildly disagree with the other half.
Yeah, I mean, being in a different country, Roger Ebert is someone I've only really I've heard about him, but I've never seen any of his shows or anything. But I know him as being this all-hallowed critic of all time. But he's
Hmm.
not someone whose opinion I've ever really kind of sought out. But it's good
I,
to hear
I
that as someone who doesn't like horror films, he still liked this. That's pleasing.
Yeah, I think it's because there's suspense. I think that this handles suspense and thrills differently than other shark movies do, which is maybe why it's not why some people find it to be a little boring or a little slow, you know? I think also it makes a bad first impression with that opening 15 minutes.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah, if I wasn't watching it for this, I'm not sure would have made it past the opening. Yeah, but I'm very glad that I did. So listeners, if you started watching this and just immediately turned it off, we get it, but try again. It's like an extra hour of your time is all you need to spend on it.
Hmm.
It's well worth it. I think actually the most upsetting part of the film for me was the end credits, when we see the dead shark being strung up and definned and gutted and all the intestines and everything spilling out, and they
Hmm.
take out that camera. I just hate seeing that kind of thing. I don't know, just like guts, because it's a real shark and real guts, and they just find a camera in there. It's Daniel's camera. But to me,
Hmm.
that was the most kind of graphic and awful part of the film that I didn't need. Uh, yeah, which yeah, the
Yeah,
most yeah the most
I mean
horror
it's
aspect
very
of it.
much one of those cannibal holocaust things where it's like when they kill the turtle or whatever, and it's like that's a real thing, and that's upsetting to see someone actually murder this thing. But I will say, I think in the benefit of this movie is they staged the camera finding,
Yes.
and they were going to kill the shark no matter what. Like the shark was getting killed to be eaten, not killed for the movie.
Yeah, it's I mean though it's the bison or something in Apocalypse Now is what I always go back to, as just being hacked with machetes, which
Hmm.
I think I've seen that once, and it's just an image that just always in my head, and it's been 20 odd years now.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and it's super gross. But I don't know, there is something really it's unpleasant, but something really tasteful about the fact that we don't see sharks bite them at all. But when you see the camera that's eaten, it's like yeah, that's all you need to know. As far as seeing them being eaten, the camera got eaten. That is a really tasteful artistic choice to it that has a very this movie has a very low amount of blood, and a very small amount of violence that you actually see as far as bites are concerned, which is not typical of this genre.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once Daniel is killed, dies.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's not killed. He dies. When his body is pushed away, you can still Susan still can hear and just about see the sharks nibbling at him bit by bit, and his body thrashing
Oh
around a
yeah,
little bit, and that's kind of the
the
worst of
way
what
he
we
gets
see.
he's bobbing like a cork and they pull him under
Yeah.
oh, it's so sad.
Yeah, so she witnesses that and goes, nope, not for me, and takes herself out. Yeah,
Hmm.
understandable. Uh, yeah. So it's a fairly short film where they're not in a lot of places. So we've reached the end of my notes. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about Open Water?
Um, no, I mean that's kind of all I've got to say about it. I just think it's very, very well done, and you can talk about this movie, but at a certain point, it's yeah, I mean, we've talked about everything there is to say in this movie because it's just a short film and it's got a very simple premise: survive
Yeah, and it does
or
it all
wait.
very well. Yeah, try and fail.
Uh-huh.
Is the outcome. Yes. We have a couple of features on this show when we talk about new films. The first of which is a list of how is this film similar to Deep Blue Sea. Just we have to tie it back in somehow. So I have a little list of
Hmm.
how Open Water is similar to Deep Blue Sea, and it's all fairly rote stuff at this point. But there's a plane ride to a remote destination. There's a crowded
Hmm.
boat before an incoming storm. There are
Hmm.
extras dancing on a boat in the background in one shot. There's swimming underwater. Uh, uh, a boat takes the rest of the cast away early on in the film. Uh,
Yes, that does happen.
a character pees.
Hmm.
There are sharks. There's a scene where everyone yells at and blames each other. Uh, they're cut off out at sea. There's a helicopter. Uh, there's a camera out at sea because Preach has his camera, and we see sharks eat something that was eaten also in Jaws. Because in Jaws they have the tiger shark with the same number plate in its mouth as
Hmm.
in Deep Sea. And did you happen to catch the surnames of Daniel and Susan's characters?
I did not.
On their little scuba licenses, their surnames are Susan Watkins and Daniel Kintner. Watkins and Kintner are two of the victims of Jaws. There's the Kintner boy, and I think it's Chrissy Watkins, I think, is the girl killed at the start.
Oh, that is cute. I love that.
It's a nice little subtle nod. I did not pick up on that. I learned that from the With Gawley and Rust podcast, who did a shark season. So that's
cool, though.
That's one feature. Another feature is how deep and how blue is open water. So I go through the film and I work out, on average, I do some research and work out how deep that all the action is taking place at any given point, and work out the average depth of the action in the film. And then I do the same with the blueness, how blue is the screen at any given point, and work out an average blueness. So deep blue sea is on average about 14.5 meters or 47.5 feet deep and 31% blue. Harmony, do you think open water is deeper and or bluer than deep blue sea?
I think it is a no to both of those, because this movie feels mostly gray and it takes place at the surface.
You're definitely right in terms of the depth, because it is almost entirely at the surface. There are some diving sequences, and we're told that they are allowed to dive down to a maximum depth of 60 feet. So I was generous and said if they're diving, they're at 60 feet deep. But there is also that brief sequence where they're on a plane, which has them really high up in the air. So this actually works out as being 52.8 meters or 173.2 meters feet up in the air, which makes this
great.
82nd deepest film, or actually our 10th highest film that we've covered. This is higher than the Final Countdown, but not quite as high as Rennie Harlin's Skip Trace. There are higher films. Avatar: The Way of Water has bits that are in space, for instance, as does Godzilla vs. Biollante. So those are significantly higher than open water. But blueness, actually, this is a very blue film, because whenever it is quite grey, it is a bluey grey. So I did count that as being blue. So this works out as being 67.07% blue, which makes it our 5th bluest film. It's bluer than Jaws 2, not as blue as The Shallows. It's up there. It's in the top 5 bluest films.
Well, how about that? I mean, it's just two people in the ocean. It's just a bit of a dingy looking ocean, you know?
Yeah. But like most of this film is like 95% blue, just ocean with a couple of heads bobbing in it. So yeah, very, very, very blue film. Well done, everyone involved. But they lost. They could have been more. They could have blue credits. That's why I always keep telling people, you want to get high on the list, blue credits. That's all you need. I don't know why more people don't do it. They're wasting their percentage points. But that'll do it for open water. So Harmony, please, where can our listeners find you online? What do you do over at This Ends at Prom?
Oh, over at This Ends at Prom, which I co-host with my wife. We talk about coming of age and teen girl movies, either about or marketed towards teen girls, and we unpack them through her having grown up and loving them, and me having watched none of them growing up, and we see how they were in their time and how they hold up now through like a very wide-ranging spectrum of sex and gender. So that's what we do there, and I think at some point we'll have maybe a shark movie. Like Soul Surfer's a thing, I think. So maybe we'll do a shark movie over there sometime.
I was trying to think if there was a coming of age shark film, and none came to mind. But I've not heard of Soul Surfer.
It's about a girl who gets her arm bitten off by a shark but continues to surf. And if I recall correctly, I think either the person that the story is based on or the actress, I think it's the original person, is like a weirdo conservative now. So we didn't do it during Shark Week last year because of
fun. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll put that low on the list of ones to get to. But
yeah.
So I think at the time of recording, Mean Girls the Musical is the next one I can think of, the next big coming of age film coming out. Is that one you're looking forward to?
Yes. So my wife BJ actually just went to a premiere of that last night, and she says it's very, very good. She does not like it as much as the Broadway production because the original musical is, I guess, like 2.5 hours long, and they needed to trim it out. But yeah, I think it's about 14 songs lighter than the stage musical.
Oh, wow.
And there's a few songs that are regrettably cut because they're great. But yeah, the movie itself is apparently quite good.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that one as well. Great. And do you have any other projects you wanted to plug?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to find me on social media, I'm over on Twitter and Instagram at Velocitraptor, and I don't do the best job of using those very often because I'm like going, not intentionally, but just naturally drifting off the grid of the internet. But like I'm around and I still do things when I have things to do. So yeah, you can follow me there for any updates if you want them.
Great. And whilst you're there, listeners, you can also follow this podcast at Deep Blue Sea Pod. We pretty much just promote the show because we are also kind of drifting away from social media as much as possible. But we have Instagram pictures of the show, the films. And you can you can find my personal site, lifeversusfilm.com, and Mark's site is moviesfilmsandflicks.com. And Mark will be back next week. What are we doing next week? Next week, we're going to start another franchise where we're looking at deep blue scenes in a franchise. We did well with the Jurassic Park films last year, and now we're going to start with a franchise that's closer to Mark's heart with the Hunger Games, looking at aquatic scenes from the Hunger Games films, which Mark worked on at least one of those films. I'm sure he'll have lots to tell us about that.
Hunger Games 2 is pretty wet. I like that one a lot.
Absolutely, we'll get to that one next month. We're going to start with, there's not a lot that I can recall in the first Hunger Games. I think there's like Peter by a pool making his face look like a rock is all I can remember.
Yes.
But
there is a little bit there, but yes.
Well, we'll revisit. We'll talk about the rest of the film. I'm sure I have some issues with those films, but we'll be mainly positive, as we always are on this show. But that will do it for Open Water. Thank you once again to my guest Harmony Colangelo.
Thank you. It's always fun to get around to talking about shark movies because they're near and dear to my heart, especially one like this.
And we won't leave it as long next time. We'll have you back for some other one, I'm sure. But I've been Jake Lewis, and we'll deep blue see you next week.